Yes, indeed, 21 degrees centigrade in Abuja. Good morning and welcome Sunrise Daily. I'm Nelta Igbe.
Sun is up. Praise God. Good morning and welcome to Sunrise Daily. I'm Kayla Magwa.
And I'm Ayo Makinde. Good morning and welcome. Today is August the 21st in the year 2024. Well, just in case you need to know, this is Badagry. And this is Badagry Expressway. It is just that one place. It's a border community for those who are not aware. Well, maybe this information is more for Kayla and people like her who always see Lagos as the next London, Nigeria's London or New York and all of that. But hey, just so you know, and it's not like those places that we've been showing over time, like as in Yobe, as in Adamawa. It is not a rural community. It's a border community. It has a number of firsts to its name, to its credit in our country, and it's a historical community as well. It borders Nigeria with another country, and it is just as I said, and it's along the Badagry Expressway that you will find, this particular community. I know that some of the people living in this community are wondering, wait, this can't be my community. Well, yes, it is. It's just that you've never really seen your community from right above you. Maybe to give you a better view next time, if you know how to use Google Earth, just Google, put Google Earth on your phone or your device and just tap on location. It'll show you where you are right now looks like. So when we bring the videos to you, you might say, yes, that's right. That's my community. Oh, that's what my house looks like on TV. Yes, that is it. Kayla, education for you.
Thank you. I've been on this road, by the way.
Oh, congratulations.
I went to Benin Republic by road. I think this was the road that we followed. This is the road that has a lot of immigration officers on it. This is the one. And I remember then it was some years back. It did feel like the road was really bad. I don't know what the state is right now. Is it better? When last were you on this road?
Ask the man sitting next to you right there, because himself and Markwe as well as Chamberlain might delude themselves into thinking they're not Abuja croonies, but no, you guys are Lagosians. You're just on just like the president. The president is a city boy, he said. All right, so that's just it. But as I said, it's an international road, and it's one that is being under construction for a while. I guess we'll wait for the Lagos State government and the rest of them to come and tell us exactly, what this is like. But I can confirm that a lot of development, because it's actually a very, very difficult terrain, so to speak. Nota, you would remember, and I hope it was before you left Lagos, you're aware that around Ajangbadi and the rest of them like that, Oluti, Alakija, Finaja, all those areas were really, really rough roads. It's that same road that has the Lagos International Trade Fair, and it's been difficult for a while to get some things done on that road. I hope we've been able to cross those borders now, because I know that a number of people, when they want to go towards Badagry, towards Ojo, they would rather use the inner roads like the Iyana-Ipaja axis to get on that road as opposed to using the highway from Mile 2.
Ayo and Kayla, this axis, for me, the excitement sort of died when that project that was supposed to link Nigeria and Benin Republic and Togo, that expressway ended up, or it's still not completed. When it was first initiated, some of us were really excited, because at that time I had my elder sister living in Badagry, and I was like, to go see her, a journey that would take about 45 minutes, max an hour, you spend close to 4 hours just to get to Badagry. And I never even bothered to go beyond that point because by the time I'm getting there, I'm tired. And then I'm thinking, this is the road. Well, this is not. So
I remember this road. Do you know one of the features I noticed on it? One of the things that I noticed on this road, there were a lot of cars that had strange bottoms.
Oh.
Yes, they had like square. I'll never forget this. They had square built things under the cars, and I kept asking the people that had gone there. I was in ECOWAS when we were making that trip.
You know,
and they said it was for smuggling.
So one of the things you find on this road, as right now it looks like it's been put together. Well, this is the Badagry toll, so I think. But the road that gets you into Badagry, you can find strange vehicles, remodeled vehicles, beautiful looking, but you don't want to know what goes on in those vehicles. And as you said, you find a lot of immigration officials and customs on that road, security operatives, just to ensure that everything is done according to the law. But hey, as those who, our friend Markwe is from that axis, and a couple of other friends I know who are from Badagry, I'm sure they'll be excited to see their community out here on television. But as beautiful as this may be, it's one of the oldest communities in Nigeria. The slave trade happened through there. There were certain trades that were done through that access, but it's a very historical community and something that everyone will want to gain interest and gain more knowledge about. So that's the Badagry community. But we would just move from here straight on, get to look at what some of the daily are saying.
Motivated. NLC's counsel, Right IGP, says Ajero will appear next week. Stop this intimidation, judicial harassment. ITC tells FG. Find the details of that story on page 2 of the paper this morning. Same story is on the front page of the Vanguard newspaper. Police invitation to Ajero: we won't be silenced. Directs workers to shut down economy if Ajero is arrested. As global workers groups, CSOs, others raise alarm about worsening rights abuses in Nigeria. Why Ajero turned down police invitation, according to Falana, demands full details, the nature of allegations, says Ajero can only honor invitation August 29. The details on the inside pages of the paper this morning. That same story is on the front page of the New Telegraph. Alleged terrorism financing others will shut down economy if Ajero is arrested. NLC warns, calls on state councils, affiliate unions to mobilize members, asks FG to stop witch-hunting labor leaders. Ajero gives own date to honor police invitation. ITUC condemns ongoing intimidation of trade unions in Nigeria. Story you'll find on pages 2 and 4 of the paper. This Nigeria newspaper has the same story. Police invitation, NLC will go on strike if Ajero is arrested. Agreed to honor invite on August 29. Falana demands details of allegations against Ajero. ITUC condemns ongoing intimidation of unions in Nigeria. Nigerian News Direct has its own angle: alleged terrorism financing, Falana CSO's wedding as NLC threatens shutdown over Ajero's invitation. Be on red alert for nationwide action if Comrade Ajero is arrested. If Comrade Ajero is arrested, NLC 2 members. Ajero can't honor police invitation due to prior engagement. That's from Falana. CSOs demand open investigation into allegations. That's the Nigerian News Direct this morning. Another issue in the news is on the front page of the Daily Dependent. FG moves to enforce Supreme Court verdict on LG autonomy. Raises 10-man interministerial committee led by Akume. Implements plan to save 10 billion naira from COP29 expenses. Find the details on the inside pages of the paper. Look at the front page of Business Day. Tinubu's petrol subsidy gulps 15 trillion naira as scarcity worsens. Economists say subsidy hurting government revenue. Details on the front page, the rest of it on the inside pages. Blueprint newspaper, independent petroleum producers, crude supply to Dangote refinery, others must be on willing buyer, willing seller basis. What does that mean? NLC explains 7.2% stake in Dangote refinery. One private sector can't be used to subsidize another, as from IPPG. Find the details of what that means on the inside pages of the paper this morning. A not too pleasant story you find on the front page of Daily Trust newspaper concerns as 43 die of food poisoning in 2 weeks. The details of that story continue on the inside pages, but look at the writers. Farmers, agri-workers blame hoarding, importation of substandard items. Edu warns against indiscriminate use of preservatives. Avoid expired products. That's from the NMA. The Guardian newspaper, customs spot rates adoption. Duty FX rates shift 100 times in 2024. Spike prices of goods by 120%. And some infographics on the front page right there for you. The details on the inside pages of the paper. These are some of the papers this morning at the newsstands.
I have my eyes on the Blueprint newspaper this morning, as well as the Business Day newspaper. But let me begin with the Blueprint newspaper, which is talking about the independent petroleum producers and talking about crude oils. It's essentially all talking about that, as well as, of course, the front page of Business Day newspaper. I think I'll give attention to that, which is speaking about the petrol subsidy and all. And it just raises one question, and the question is, why is there fuel scarcity in Lagos State? Now, there are those in the field, in the energy sector, who say, and believe so, that the major cities in Nigeria that consume petroleum products the most are Lagos, Abuja, maybe Port Harcourt, but principally Lagos and Port Harcourt. So the wonder is there, why do we have scarcity in Lagos? Why are there so many queues? And how come no one is talking to Nigerians? We understand that if it is from Lagos that all the other parts of Nigeria are supplied petroleum products. So the landing is in Lagos. And we understand, we're made to believe, and Kayla and Nelta, you may want to let us know, we understand that fuel scarcity is abating, fuel queues are abating gradually in Abuja, but it would seem like it's now being transferred to Lagos. So what is going on? Well, is it an issue with the NNPC? We understand that Ipman is saying on the front pages of the dailies yesterday, I think, that look, we can't find these things in the market. We can only sell what we buy. And if there is no product for us to buy, then there is no product for us to sell. So, dear NNPC, or rather NNPCL, what is going on? Why do we have fuel scarcity in Lagos? I can also say that hardly will you find one NNPC fuel station in the city of Lagos, that has fuel. So if the person, the organization that is supplying the nation with petrol cannot supply fuel to the city in which it through which it comes into Nigeria, and we find this fuel in other cities of the country, I think Nigerians deserve some explanation as to what exactly is going on. Is NNPCL being sabotaged? And is NNPCL unable to come out and say we are being sabotaged? Are the allegations, the rumors of bunkering, resuming of illegal exportation of fuel, are they true? Let someone come out and give Nigerians the facts, so that at least our minds can be at rest and say, okay, someone knows what is going on and we are being given the right information. That's my take this morning, Kayla and Nyota.
I mean, you're absolutely correct. But you see, the answers to those questions that you asked are actually in the leadership newspaper this morning. If you go to page 8, actually from the front page, it starts to explain what the issues are, especially with Lagos, distribution challenges. And then, of course, they're talking about how, marketers are blaming these queues at petrol stations in Lagos, particularly, for the NNPC's rationing of the product. It's actually there, the front page of the leadership newspaper this morning. You can get it more on it from page 8 of leadership newspaper, so you can understand what's really going on. It's pretty disappointing. It's just something we keep hearing over and over and over again. It's not the first time I'm hearing distribution challenges, thunderstorms, the roads, the flood, the monkey went to the market, came back without his money. There's so much that happens every single day. There's always one story, always some explanation going on. So yeah, the answers to those questions, especially if you're in Lagos and you're wondering. In Abuja though, I didn't notice. Did you notice anything about the fuel queues?
Well, I did notice some fuel stations that don't have the product.
Yeah, because it's generally locked. I've seen places locked.
The ones that do have the product, some of them have short queues, some have no queues, especially if you're living on the outskirts of the city. Yeah. But if you're in the city center, you find a few of them that have queues, not too long, and they are moving, howbeit slowly. Yeah. But the question I asked points to, again, you see, everything rises and falls on leadership. But someone's turned it the other way, say it's not just about leadership, it's understood leadership. Because some people are in leadership, but they don't understand what they're. And leadership is not necessarily you're at the helm of affairs. It's also the fact that where you are, you're a leader where you are, and you can lead in that space. So it's beyond distribution. It's also the understanding that leadership is about service to the people. That's according to the Cross River State Governor. So if it is service to the people, that means whatever I'm doing needs to reach the people. Yeah. If it's not getting to the people, then what's the point? I'm seeing here on the front page of New Telegraph, the story there saying import has dropped by 33%. Say PMS, prolonged scarcity looms as import drops by 33%. That's the front page or just before, above the nameplate of the New Telegraph, and that speaks a lot to ask a lot, puts out a lot more questions. So it's beyond the distribution. The importation of the product itself has dropped. So there's bound to be a reaction to that drop in importation. But also very interesting on the front page of the New Telegraph, which is also splendid on other newspapers as well, is this one. COP29, Tinubu orders scrutiny pruning of delegates to save 10 billion naira. That's very interesting. And I know that, I'm sure we'll get...
that's part of our conversation
we'll
today.
Get clarity on that, but it's here, so we'll get some clarity. How will the numbers be pruned down, especially considering that some of those that attend this event are not exactly government delegates. So would it be more clear how they...
Will it be more of the business community? Where's the pruning coming from?
So,
and then it's important as well, so because when the protests were happening, many people were talking about the excessive amounts of money spent on trips like this. So basically, they said he's the president keeping his word. He's reducing that cost and explaining to us how it's done. So you want to stay for that conversation?
Indeed, it's going to be an interesting time. But again, just about the last one here for me on New Telegraph is probe expel Wike for anti-party conduct. FARC charges the PDP. That's again on the front page of New Telegraph. If you go to page 5, you read more on that. That story about the COP29 is on page 2, and the reduction in importation is on page 4. That's it for New Telegraph. And then beyond what the national dailies are saying, there is also the bit about what's going to happen today.
Oh dear, it's a very busy day in the nation's capital. So let's see if we can run through a few of them. I was looking at the camera crew, the drivers, everyone from Channels TV running out of the office this morning. And that is because there's a lot going on in the nation's capital. We'll start off with this one, Human Capital Development. The National Youth Council of Nigeria is having a worldwide conference at the Ministry of Youth Development. That's happening at the Federal Secretariat. Our crew are already there, just so we can hear what the youth are saying. Everyone is talking about Nigeria's youth. Remember that there is a National Youth Council of Nigeria.
So the question some of us asked, before we let our youthhood some say we're no longer youth because our hair is grey. Also, I am my weighing on this one though. But before we left our youth group, they said the National Youth Council is every youth they actually get to. Because I've never heard them talk to me. They're more or less dealing with themselves. So how youthful is the National Youth Council? How many youth in the country actually relate with them effectively? So these are one of the things we're hoping that they'll get to answer. They're discussing human capital development today, as Kayla said. But beyond that, what else is happening? The Minister of the FCT is going to be having a dialogue. And a lot of people will be wondering, okay, so this one's about the war against insurgency here.
Yes, we're going to start with, the FCT minister, yes.
Discussing the FCT administration. What would he be talking about in the FCT administration? What's happening? I actually read out one headline there on front page of New Telegraph where someone was calling for his expulsion from the People's Democratic Party. Is he going to weigh in on that? Someone suggested that he might start from that point, and somebody else said no, he's going to focus on the FCT administration. He's not going to go beyond the FCT administration. But hey, being who he is and who he has always been known to be, would he let some things slide?
I mean, I don't think he's going to let some things slide. I don't know. It's always a banger whenever he holds these media briefings. Oh, and I hear we're bringing that live. So once stay with Channels TV, we'll get that for you. Indeed. Now, today, in the war against insurgents, is a very important day for the whole world. The United Nations International Day of Remembrance and Tribute to Victims of Terrorism is holding at the UN House. Here in Abuja today. So a very solemn occasion. I've attended this occasion several times. You get to see the families of those who were affected by one terrorist attack or the other. The UN House itself in Abuja was attacked many years ago. So they always go to that spot, and then they do a remembrance and everyone, they pray about it, they lay wreaths and, so it's a day of remembrance. So yes, for those of you who are at the UN House today, and for those of you who are victims of insurgency in one way or the other, know that our thoughts and prayers are with you. Ayo has some business for us.
Youthful Ayo, you mean?
The young Ayo.
Whatever you want to say. Kayla, don't mind him. Well, let's talk business this morning at 10 o'clock. Financial and professional services sector. Amidst the headwinds, that's what the conversation is going to be about when it's time for Business Morning on Sunrise Daily at the top of the next hour. Guess it's time for us to get into the nitty-gritty, guys.
This will mean that Nigerians will have full and real-time access into the numbers of who is attending and those who government is sponsoring to COP29. The nearly $500,000 showcase pavilion that was purchased for last year's COP28 will no longer be an item of expenditure in COP29. We are also ensuring that some of these wasteful platforms that give rise to consultancies and subcontracts for lighting, for technological provision, that these are elements that can be provided directly from the Secretariat of the National Council on Climate Change. With all of the savings through the provision and implementation of the Climate Accountability and Transparency Portal, as well as our active cut down of expenditure items that were found in the COP28 expenditure profile, we have put ourselves in a position to save this country over 10 billion naira on this 11-day event in November.
Welcome back. That's all. We'll start our conversation from Nigeria's plans for COP29. We do remember COP28 generated a lot of conversations. Why? With the state of the economy, why do we need such a large delegation? And of course, there was a lot of explanations, both from the private and the public sector. Why do we need that? But beyond COP29, we're also looking at the green economy. Because yes, they're going to sit down and talk about the climate change, climate action, what's being done, what has been done, what has the impact of COP28 been like as we go into COP29. All of these are things to be looking at. Joining us for this conversation is the Special Advisor to the President on Media and Publicity, Chief Ajuri Ngelale. Thank you for joining us.
Always a pleasure to be with you, my brother and my sister. Good morning.
It's been a while we've seen you.
It's true. You know, it probably has something to do with the fact that I currently have 2 jobs.
And those jobs are not easy jobs.
No, they're not.
One global, one local. But both of them global anyway, because Nigeria is a global player. But let's start off from this point here. COP29, I do remember you were sitting on that same seat, and we were talking about the fact that there was this huge delegation. Now you've told us that number is going to be so slashed down that we'll be saving as much as 10 billion naira. That's a lot of money to save. But why do we even need a delegation?
Thank you very much, Nyota. So let's unpack a few elements of what the problem was and what the resolutions are. The problem we had was during COP28 last November in Dubai. You'd recall that there was a lot of brouhaha around a figure that was being bandied about in some elements of the press, not all. Some responsible press were very careful not to advance anything that was, misinformative. But we obviously had to come out, the Minister of Information at that time had to come out with the actual figure, which was basically a third of the figure that had been reported that had caused quite a bit of a stir in the country. So there was deliberate misinformation at the time. Now, with that said, I think one of the major aspects of how that whole confusion occurred was around the fact that you have people attending who had attended COP28 who are not sponsored by government, right? So you have people who register online as members of NGOs and academicians and the private sector actors and many people. We're talking into the hundreds of people who were in this category who had no link to government whatsoever, who were not sponsored by government whatsoever, but were being treated numerically as those who are being sponsored by government. So there needed to be a delineation, and there was not around that time. That's number one. Number two is you had officials coming from state governments, in addition to federal MDAs, and then of course from the legislature, who kind of made up the numbers from those sponsored from the government. Now, some were sponsored by their ministries directly, right? So in the case of ministers, they were sponsored directly from their ministries and their aides, etc. State governments, state governors and their commissioners and their aides were sponsored by the states. So it was striated. Now, with all of that said, what we found was after that whole storm came about, the president essentially said, look, we have to conduct an audit of this process. We need to know exactly how this happened. We need to know what the numbers are, and we need to know what the expenditure profile was. And he did that. Now, in my capacity as the Special Presidential Envoy on Climate Action, I'm now the national coordinator of all climate-related activities of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, coordinating both the federal and state government, functionaries to achieve ultimately the objectives of the country. Part of that is leading the country's delegation to the to the next COP. So I've been kind of tasked with the process of making sure that the next COP is much smoother and much less controversial, certainly, than the last COP. And part of that process of audit essentially led us to unveil certain wasteful expenditures around subcontracting, consultancies that were unnecessary, services that could be provided by entities that are already funded by government, including the National Council on Climate Change. But people were essentially bringing in, and this is the Nigerian story, and part of the reason why we have not made the kind of progress we should have made by now is that there are always these special interests, and people are bringing in people they don't need to bring in simply to transfer government money into private accounts. We've been able to cut all that out. In fact, I'm going to break a little bit of news this morning by informing our people that when we came into this office, we found that there was an agreement within one of the climate institutions that essentially stipulated that a friend of some government at some point would collect 15% of all grants and donations payable to the Federal Republic of Nigeria on the basis of almost no work done. That is the level of rot. And yes.
What?
Absolutely. I know.
It's shocking.
It's unbelievable.
Well, how many COPs did that agreement?
Well, no, this isn't related to COP necessarily. This is related to all the platforms of all the various climate-related activities of government. Someone was able to get an agreement. Fortunately for us, very little damage was done in terms of monies paid to this person.
Because that was my question was going to be how much has been paid to
absolutely. So we were able to find that not much has been paid to this person because we caught it early. But if we had not caught it when we caught it, if we had not come in when we came in, the damage could have been incalculable because you're dealing with potentially billions of dollars over the course of time that will come into this sector as a result of the work that's going on. We were able to come in, and that agreement has been canceled. The president is aware of it. I brought it to his attention. And there's really a lot going on in these spaces where people always look at oil and gas, telecoms, financial services regulation, CBN, and many of these other, NPA, and many of these other big tax collection agencies, etc. When they talk about finance, people don't really realize what is going on with climate finance and the need for us to get it right so that Nigerians can have the benefits of the partnerships we're putting in place.
When you talk about climate change and climate action, yes, we have the NTCOCC, that's the National Council on Climate Change, set up 2021, so that we'll have our greenhouse emissions reduced by 20% at a certain time, by 2030.
Right.
Now, some will be asking the question of what's the work towards that? How are we progressing towards that point where we'd have these, because beyond just the conversations is also how much of Nigeria is buying into that projection.
And this is why we have so much work to do. And it is to the credit of the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari that they did establish the Nigeria Energy Transition Plan that dealt with us getting to carbon neutrality by 2060, right? So we do have a framework. Are there modifications that need to be done? Absolutely. Where we are now is we've said it's one thing to have an aspirational document that is based on, the projections of large-scale inflows of finance that will enable us to make the modifications we need to make across sectors in order to meet our goals for, carbon neutrality in 2060. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, it's another thing entirely to have a very specified, tangible, and targeted plan made up of investable and bankable projects that the private sector and our multilateral partners and our donors can come in and invest in immediately in the country that will actually allow us to achieve those targets. So these are two different things. Right now, we are currently updating our nationally determined contributions document, NDC 3.0. In the first quarter of next year, that will be ready. And essentially what it is under my leadership now as the special envoy, I have mandated our team to ensure that we transit from kind of these aspirational scenarios around, if we receive $15 billion a year over the course of the next 30 years, we'll be able to meet a target. I mean, we're moving from that kind of generic, vague, conversation or kind of aspiration to what we can actually do in very targeted points in the country where we know we have mangroves, for example, in the Niger Delta, where we can do a lot of fantastic work, toward, establishing an effective carbon sink. Afforestation efforts across the north where we can build out our carbon sink, ensuring that we can, fund the process of industrial decarbonization with carbon capture technologies across the oil and gas industry. There are so many different aspects of what we can do. Right now, we have, incredible emission coming out of the telecoms industry. People don't realize that these diesel generator powered base stations, thousands of them across the country, these telecoms towers, that, there are massive emissions coming out of these facilities, and we can very quickly, transit them into, clean energy, powered systems that will totally, take away those emissions, but not just take away those emissions for the sake of healing the environment, take away those emissions for, in an economically beneficial effort to be able to attain carbon credits that have real economic value in the billions of dollars for onward investment and development across sectors in the country. There's a lot that we can do.
I want to be able to get back into the conversation about cotton costs, because the End Bad Governance protests, with all of the drama that's gone on around, one of the major things that was asked was the cost of governance is too high, and a lot of things didn't make sense. I would never forget COP. The November's COP, because there were celebrities that had nothing to do with climate change, nothing to do. They were taking videos and pictures. That was actually part of what the outrage was. A lot of Nigerians were seeing these things on social media and wondering what is going on. But I want to be able to get down to those figures, because now I guess this is the president's way of keeping his word, where he said we're going to visibly cut down these monies. My question is, as the money is cut down, what's it going to be used for? What's it going to be put into?
No, see, so the beauty of this is that there is no shortage of sectors, programs, and projects that require government support and sponsorship, right? So we have very important and tangible things that need to be done with respect to achieving food security, which I'm sure at some point we'll need to talk about. But look, any naira, I take the position that any naira we can save on attending events, for example, can be better applied in areas that will directly impact the lives of our people. And to Nyota's earlier question, he asked the question, well, why do we need to have a large delegation? I want to answer that question.
Delegation at all?
Absolutely. See, COP is a platform to, deal with climate-related negotiations around a national contribution to the global effort to ultimately get the temperature back to 1.5 degrees. But we also recognize that in the process of that, there is a lot of economic opportunity across sectors to be gleaned by various countries, and we don't want to lose out. There's a reason why, if you look at the Mexican delegation and you look at Brazil and you look at other countries, other emerging markets of our scale, they have delegation sizes that are even larger than the even bloated one that we took the last time. And theirs are not necessarily bloated, it's just the extent of work that their government is doing in these areas. So right now, if you have, for example, I'll be very practical about this. The Honorable Minister of Solid Minerals Development, Dr. Dele Alake, for example, can attend COP29 with a few of his experts within that sector, and he can be at a table with a mining company from Australia. It's one of the most prolific mining countries in the world, large-scale exports in the tens of billions of dollars. They can sit down and come to an agreement on the participation of Australian mining companies in the Nigerian mining sector, for example. That has tangible economic benefit for the future of the economy and Nigerians who will be employed as a result of those partnerships being struck. The same can be said for the Minister of Trade, the Minister of Agriculture, and several ministers are at the table, hammering out very important agreements. And even at the state level, the governor of Niger State, for example, Governor Bago, when he attended COP28 last year, came to very important agreements that had to do with the partnerships on agricultural mechanization, bringing in large-scale numbers of tractors, for example, which today, 1 year later, is fundamentally transforming the way agricultural production is undertaken in Niger State, and that's one of our food belts. So there are reasons why there's a need for significant numbers to attend COP29. But what we are saying is that we have now developed the Climate Accountability and Transparency Portal under my office in collaboration with the NCCC, the National Council on Climate Change, to ensure that Nigerians at any point in time will not be deceived by anybody. They will see in real time for themselves who is attending, what the numbers from the various, ministries, state governments, and the National Assembly are. And hopefully, because they can see that, they will now be in a position in collaboration with, CSOs and the media to be able to say, okay, honorable member from Delta State, why were you there? What did you do for the country when you were there? Honorable Minister, why were you there? State Governor, Commissioner, why were you there? What did you achieve for our state? What did you achieve for your entity that you're running? These are the questions they will now be in a position to ask because of the transparency we brought to this process, and none of that would have been possible without the leadership and the support of His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
So this conversation can happen on that portal. Nigerians can real time be asking these questions.
Absolutely. Right? All they need is access to the internet.
So let's talk a bit about, something that has been going on. I know that you are heading this whole climate bit right now. Mm-hmm. And it's a question that has been on for years since they started giving us the responsibilities to cut down our gas emissions to a certain number. And I remember former Vice President Professor Yemi Osinbajo, he had said that line between meeting our requirements, reducing our gas emissions, and the energy scarcity that we face in places like Nigeria. What's the Tinubu administration doing to create that balance? Because most of the people who are emitting all these gases do not have the poverty and energy crisis that we have. Mm. So drawing that balance between meeting our, the requirements given to us to reduce our gas emissions to a particular number and the energy scarcity that we face here, what's the Tinubu administration doing to bridge that and create a line in between?
Kayla, this is a fantastic question and it's well thought out. One of the major problems we do have is the fact that, like you rightly said, we do have energy poverty in the country. And certainly we can't align with anyone who is saying decelerate investment in energy sourcing that is pivotal to the present and future of the Nigerian economy, which is why we've taken a very clear position globally. Everywhere I've been very consistent in the national view that we will not sign up to anything that has to do with a deceleration in gas investment in particularly when you understand that emissions from the oil and gas sector in our country contribute such an insignificant portion of global emissions that it's not even a serious conversation to be had. But with that said, while we are very, very adamant about the fact that we are going to sustain and advance and promote, especially gas investment, but even offshore, cleaner offshore oil, exploration and production, that our focus is going to continue to be on taking a dual track. We're not going to be myopic. I think part of one area where I think we may have gotten it wrong in recent years is the idea that we have this knee-jerk reaction that we're going to just defend oil and gas investment without advancing our ambitions and national vision for green economic development. Why can't we have both? I believe we can. The president believes we can, and we're pursuing both now. What does that now mean? In addition to the massive spike that we're seeing in interest in terms of the oil and gas investments in the country, the president has gotten sign-on now for billions of dollars in FID from Total, Shell, and others, particularly in the deep offshore, not including gas. Now, where we are on the other side of it is that the president, and I'm very humbled by the confidence he's reposed in me, had appointed me the chairman of the Presidential Steering Committee on Project Evergreen. Evergreen City is Nigeria's first green industrial zone. This is really going to be the linchpin of the future with respect to bridging that energy poverty, that gap, and making sure that we're no longer energy impoverished. How this is going to work is the following. Very recently, I was in China. I toured the world's largest EV battery manufacturing facility that is owned by CATL. CATL is the EV battery manufacturer that produces EV batteries for BMW, for Tesla, and many, many other major industries around the world. It's the highest quality and the most advanced cutting-edge technology in EV battery and energy storage system manufacturing. Now, the reason why I was there is because they've developed a technology with their energy storage systems that essentially take the traditional solar grid that you're used to seeing in rural communities across Nigeria. We have said that it is not sustainable for us to have a situation in which essentially 100%, or at least in the 90th percentile, of all of our solar panels that we're using in the country, that REA is, spending huge amounts of money on, are Chinese imports, right? Chinese jobs, Chinese factories, Chinese tax revenue, right? We're saying that's not sustainable at a time when our young people don't have jobs and don't have economic opportunity. So what we want to do is localize all of those value chains, make sure that whatever is distributed is manufactured in country. As a result of that, when we went to CATL, they were able to present based on the design of Evergreen City that we have presented, they built out a project design that essentially allows for their energy storage systems that range in categories from 1 megawatt. Let me first of all be clear that in practical terms, the energy storage system looks like a shipping container. Yeah. It's just a container, but it's powered by a solar system, right? Once the solar energy is produced, it's inputted into this energy storage system. This storage system, they're so advanced that the storage system can maintain and keep that energy for years. Right? Now, what they've developed is a system where you don't need any oil and gas pipeline. You don't need any power transmission grid. You don't need any power distribution infrastructure with respect to substations and all these funny things. All you need is this energy storage system and cabling that will take it directly to the industry where it's sited. Almost like a power generator, 100% clean and is sustainable and affordable. Now, they have categories of these energy storage systems. 1 megawatt a box. You have 5 megawatt box. You have 10 megawatt box, 25 megawatt box, 50 megawatt box, all the way up to 250 megawatt box, if you can imagine that. So you're talking about a storage system that can power an entire state, that can power an entire industrial cluster, not to talk of the mini ones that can power universities and all sorts of various institutions. And unlike the substandard ones that we're deploying throughout the country today, where you have to replace battery every year or every 6 months and all of that, we can do it at once in a sustainable solution. Now, how we're doing this very quickly is that unlike before, where we'll be taking out loans, we'll be looking for money to be able to pay for these systems, we have evolved a new financial architecture that would allow for CATL to come into the Evergreen Industrial Zone, right, with all of the benefits that come from being in a free trade zone. And essentially, we've created the conditions for them to come in, joining in a handshake with a Chinese industry, for example, or any German industry or any industry, where you have the off-taker and the producer coming in at the same time, and the off-taker, which is the industry, will pay CATL, who is providing the energy directly without any intervention of government, without any debt accumulated.
Ayo would like to come in right now because I think he has a few questions for you as well. Hello, Ayo.
Kayla. Chief Ajuri, let me begin with, I can see your passion and it's actually communicable. But let me begin with this rather funny one. Something you revealed earlier where you said you wanted to give us a bit of news. Well, you're a journalist, so that's what you do, you give information. But how does it feel as a media practitioner, when a media practitioner in government, when you come up across some information that you know you should share, but you can't share? How does that feel sometimes?
Thank you very much. So look, I think for every public official, there is a sacred responsibility to ensure that if something is wrong, it becomes known to the greatest extent possible without it hindering an investigation or any type of remedial measure that is taken by public authorities that would lead to the resolution of whatever crisis we're talking about, right? So this is part of the problem. This is part of the, not problem, but I would say predicament that you're in as a public servant, particularly one who has a patriotic bent toward the development of our country. I think if you're in that situation, you want to be able to give as much information as you can, but you absolutely do not want to hinder the process of troubleshooting, of problem solving. So that is a factor. With that said, where there are activities going on that one can communicate and share without having to undermine the work of investigative agencies or regulatory authorities or whatever the case may be, we're going to do the best we can. I think part of what I mentioned earlier in the conversation when I talked about
it's actually quite understood.
I can't unfortunately add too much more detail to what I've said with respect to a corrupt agreement between a certain institution and a certain consultant. But these are the kinds of things
I do understand. I get all of that information, Shifaji. I just wanted to know how it feels. I mean, you're a media practitioner. You're still coming back home when you're done, serving the country in the capacity that you're in now. But talk a little about green economy. And there are so many things to talk to you about, but this one is particularly important, particularly because of the fact that many people may not even know or understand it. The green economy is a very, very large and wide thing, and practically every state in Nigeria is affected by it. On the one hand is the challenge of communication. How well aware are the citizens who should own it and insist that the needful be done by their governors? On the other hand is the challenge of collaboration between the federal government and the state governments, because the federal government can't just go into any state to do anything without this collaboration with the state governments. So how does that work, really? What's the strength and level of that collaboration between the federal and state government so that these lofty ideals that you're talking about are not just started, but sustained, even beyond this administration?
Very important question, Al. Thank you very much for that. I would absolutely acknowledge, even in public, that one of the major pinch points in the shoe of the president has been the fact that you can design the most sophisticated, the most well-meaning, well-thought-out frameworks for any sector in the country. For 90% of them, if you do not have the buy-in and effective partnership and cooperation of the state and local governments, you're not likely to succeed. Obviously, when we talk about sustainability, a major part of achieving that has been resolved in recent weeks with the president's successful, judicial challenge that led to the attainment sought for decades with respect to local government autonomy. I think that's going to be a major point of his legacy when we look back on the development trajectory of the country, that we will have local governments receiving funds and being able to administer their policies without interference of the states. Now, with that said, I think in terms of federal-state cooperation, you're always going to have differing levels of cooperation and of sincerity of purpose across states. Not every state governor is going to be as serious or as talented administratively and otherwise as the next state governor. Then you factor into that, in spite of the president's best intentions, you're always going to have a situation where some state governors who may be loyal to one political godfather in a different political party, or one person in a different political group, is maybe less willing than another governor to cooperate with the federal government merely simply on political grounds. This is a reality in our country, and unfortunately the people of our country in those states suffer from some of these political dynamics. But the president is very clear in his position. Anyone who is ready to partner with the federal government of Nigeria across political lines, across any line that you can think of conjuring, that he's ready to do it. And he's shown that across the board. He's invited the state governors, he's several times within the ambit of NEC, making appearances at NEC, essentially laying out various forms, various platforms for cooperation across sectors. And we're still seeing, even several months after some of these engagements, we're still seeing a situation in which you have only partial compliance as against total compliance, right? So this is a major problem when it comes to the sustainability of our efforts. There's no doubt about that.
That's on the one hand then. But in the process of marketing these ideas to the governors, are we able to convince them of the potential for job creation for their people? Because I'm looking at the potential of the renewable energy, for instance, that you're talking about. We understand that solar energy potential in Nigeria is very, very prominent in the north. Katsina, Sokoto, Borno, have much higher solar irradiance, and that makes them particularly suitable for large-scale solar projects. And we can imagine the number of jobs that can be created from that. Then we go to hydropower, go to wind energy, and there are states listed here right before me that have this potential. What are the potential job creation opportunities from this green economy should the governors fully buy into it?
So this is part of the strategy of the president, is saying, look, in every conversation he's having with the governors across economic spheres, what he's telling them is, this is what's in it for your people. And this is what we're ready to provide in terms of, is it a federal regulatory approval? Is it a tax incentive regime? Is it a duty waiver regime within a certain sector? What are those incentives that we need to put in place to ensure that there's a win-win economic opportunity that will benefit the people of your state? This is how, Mr. President, advances some of these opportunities to the state. So he's already kind of doing what you're referring to. But when you ask the question about green economy, this is why I get really excited about this. This isn't just a job for me. This is a real opportunity. When you look at the fact that you can now have the general theme of development, the industrial revolutions of past ages, and even mostly in the present age, especially in emerging markets, suggest that for industry to thrive, you have to have traditional energy, right? You need to have some gas pipeline architecture that will allow you to be able to power your large-scale industry by whether by gas or whether some other energy source, but predominantly gas, right? And what we have now found, and this is not to, again, disincentivize or suggest that gas does not have its pride of place in the future of the Nigerian economy, because it does. But what we're saying is we have quick win solutions that are sustainable and that are mobile, that you can put in any part of the country, anywhere in the country, and you can power almost any type of industry with these energy storage systems. There will always be interest groups and organized, contention or kind of an adversarial approach of some interest groups that feel that your energy storage technology and energy storage systems coming in will threaten the viability of their sector or threaten the viability of their industry. And so what a big part of my job is to communicate very clearly to the oil and gas community and many others that we're not in the business of attempting to even replace traditional energy. We're here to add value to traditional energy. We're here to cleanse what is presently there.
There's quite a lot. I mean, there's never enough time, Marjorie, to talk about climate change and our commitments. But it is interesting, the few commitments that have been made here today from your office. Number one, that cutting of that cost and saving us 10 billion, even though you didn't quite tell us exactly what that money was going to be used for. You said the point is that there are so many places that they can be used. And there was a second thing. The second commitment which you make, which is that in the agreements that are going to be made at COP29, there isn't going to be anyone that would adversely affect, make us plunge deeper into the energy scarcity that we feel that we were able to get those two out of you. But I want to thank you.
I just wanted to quickly say that the money, the 10 billion we referred to, is not money that is within the climate treasury. We're talking of reducing the money that comes from a central point into climate, so it can be applied to education, health, and anything else. That's the point.
Yes, indeed. Well, we thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
For being with us on the program. It's always nice to see you.
So we'll just dash off to the Business Morning Studio on Sunrise Daily, where they'll continue to talk more money, and we'll be back after that.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Business Morning on Sunrise Daily. Yes, we do business for just about 30 minutes before we head back to the Sunrise Daily studio. We start from the global space, and its oil prices this morning. It slipped on Wednesday. An estimate showing swelling U.S. crude inventories and expectations that tensions in the Middle East were easing following a tour of the region by mediators. We put our eyes on the number now. We see it's not so much, but at least we see that Brent sustains that below $80 price that it's had for about 3 days now. $77.11 a barrel after a drop 0.1%. WTI of the United States, $73.05, and that's down 0.2%. So U.S. crude oil stocks were seen rising last week by 347,000 barrels, according to American Petroleum Institute figures. And then gasoline and distillate stocks however, fell by 1.043 million barrels and 2.247 million barrels. So, of course, more supply means that prices will drop. The United States, we know, is the world's biggest producer and consumer of oil, and growing inventories points to oversupply that could hinder prices. Official U.S. government inventory estimates are set to be released later on today, while U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken have wrapped up a trip to the Middle East intended to help broker a ceasefire agreement in Gaza. So while we continue Business Morning on other platforms, our DSTV viewers will now head to Abuja, where the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike, is having a briefing. He does have a message for us, but for the other platforms on Channels Television, we'll continue with Business Morning. Now let's see what's happening with Naira and see how it did yesterday. Well, the NAFEX actually depreciated to start with. So we see a drop of 0.33% for NAFEX. It opened at 1,580 Naira 46 kobo, but closed at 1,585 Naira 61 kobo. A bigger drop we see for NAFEM. Would you say the negative trend, is it back again? Is it here to stay? 0.81%. We see that the Naira lost. It opened at 1,579 Naira 22 kobo, but closed at 1,592 Naira 6 kobo. It's expected that at least we will retain the 1,500, 1,600 level for now, I guess, pending when we'll have another intervention by the Central Bank of Nigeria. And the good thing is the Central Bank is more empowered now. When we saw the numbers they shared yesterday on remittance from the diaspora, we saw the highest and an all-time high is what we saw there from the Central Bank of Nigeria. Is the highest ever, climbed by 130% year on year to 553 million within the period. And that's, of course, according to the Central Bank of Nigeria. In a statement that they released yesterday, the financial market regulator says the figure represents the highest monthly total inflows on record. And they attribute this to ongoing effort to enhance forex liquidity and strengthen public confidence in the foreign exchange market. These measures include granting licenses to new IMTUs, as international money transfer operators, enabling them timely access to Naira liquidity and implementing a willing buyer, willing seller model. And as we know, the latest of the effort has been the reintroduction of the Dutch auction system by the Central Bank. Closely related to that, the Nigerian Securities and Exchange Commission has announced its plans to license providers of virtual assets, including cryptocurrencies, to complement the growing adoption of cryptocurrencies in the country. Well, cryptocurrencies seems to be getting some attention now. We know just on Saturday, the FIRS boss had said that they are looking the way of regulating, at least capturing it into the fold. You know, now the Director General of SEC, Mr. Gama Emomotimi, says that the Commission intends to issue first licenses for digital service and tokenized assets this month. The Nigerian SECDG explains that this latest move, which is a reversal of its policy following earlier crackdowns on crypto entities, aims to provide a platform where crypto dealings will be transparent and devoid of currency manipulations. Nigeria was named the second biggest economy in terms of crypto adoption last year. So it seems the government cannot run away from this anymore. We'll have a conversation on this during Business Incorporated, so you don't want to miss the show at 1 p.m. We'll see what the crypto community thinks of this. They've been looking even clamoring for regulation to capture them into the formal system, financial system of Nigeria, and allow them to do their businesses. Of course, it might cost taxes, but at least you know you are a legal entity operating in the country. So we'll discuss that at 1 p.m. During Business Incorporated. Now, still staying around that, let's keep our eyes now on what's happening in still the financial sector, but we expand that to say financial and professional services is what we'll be looking at, the state of that sector in 2023, as you know, get some lessons from there. If we could have those slides now, the Nigerian banking subsector for 2023. This is captured or compiled. This report is compiled by Enterprise NGR. Well, of course, we'll talk to them very soon. Well, first of all, let's see what they shared with us. Let's start with the banking sector for 2023. They saw an increase. I think the word or summary of the report says that sector, that's the financial services sector, was resilient in spite of everything that we saw in 2023. So Enterprise NGL says that in 2023, banking accounted for 46% of GDP. That shows 28.8% surge in output at 3.5 trillion naira. That's what we had. That's for 2023. Let's look at insurance next and see what they did. There you have it. So insurance GDP also went up last year, 0.4%. On the exchange, we keep seeing the numbers here. Every time we do a review of the market numbers at the NGX, we saw insurance. Since last year, they started getting some attention in the midst of the boom. And even sometimes when the major stocks seem to be, well, profit-taking seems to be the theme, we've seen insurance surge and sometimes. So last year, they increased, their index increased by almost 85% growth, and they also gave employment. I guess one of the things that also brought attention to that, remember, I think 2 years ago, there was a review of some of those insurance premium, especially the one that people cannot escape, the third party for vehicles. I guess that also contributed to that. Now, let's look at the next one, and that will be capital markets. Okay, this is sustainable finance. Very interesting one here. We see it getting more attention, sustainable finance. And last year, we saw that there were 2 sustainable projects approved by the AFDB. We also have, I think before this, we do have a significant increase of about 844.5 trillion or billion when it comes to sustainable finance. There you have it. So Nigeria's green bond stock last year, 47.8 billion for the green bond. Of this, the federal government has 15 billion, while corporates, that's from the private sector, had 32.8 billion. And of course, this is talking about sustainable finance, green projects that should contribute to sustainable development in the country. And so then we also had the capital market. I think we celebrated the market a whole lot last year following that real big boom. Even to the beginning of this year, we saw the capital market that the all share experienced a remarkable 45.9% increase. We even hit and surpassed the 100,000 level, even though we seem far away from that by now. And then witnessed a significant upswing, reaching a staggering 3.58 trillion naira, reflecting 53.95. Let's drill more on this, and more importantly, what do we see by the end of this year? Especially because those twin reforms that have changed conversations in Nigeria are still here, talking about the removal of fuel subsidy or not. At this stage, we don't know how to capture that. And of course, the unification of the rates in the market. And we're going to be having this discussion now with the Chief Executive Officer of Enterprise NG, those who put this together. We have Ms. Obi Ibekwe joining us in the studio this morning. Ms. Ibekwe, good morning.
Morning.
And thank you for your time. So I see that you have your eyes on, financial and professional services.
Absolutely.
And one would have thought, a major revenue comes from oil. Why did you choose this for your report? Why did you choose this sector for your report?
Thank you, Ini. Thank you for having me.
Good to have you.
Enterprise NGR is a member-led and member-funded organization that is focused on advocating for the financial and professional services sector. And we're unique in the sense that we focus on all the subsectors of the financial and professional services sector with a view to positioning Nigeria as the premier financial center in Africa. All those sectors are required to be doing as well as our banking sector for us to achieve that vision. And that informs the format of our report that reviews performance in all the subsectors, as well as looking at the challenges in the sector and making recommendations. And another unique thing about that report is that it's contribution from operators who are members of Enterprise NGR. So we're getting, the issues firsthand from the operators that are actually experiencing them, and also what they think, industry perspective, as to the solutions or recommendations that they would like to see in place.
So when I went through your report, I saw the word resilience very dominant. There were that operators in the sector were able to thrive in spite of all of the challenges that they saw in 2023, and those challenges are still here in 2023, if not even more, because now you have the 70% windfall tax, which is going to be another, major element on the plate of operators, especially for the banks. You have the recap. We've seen some tier 1 banks head to the market and are out. A couple of reports show, they've done very well, even though I don't know why they had to extend, But so when we look at that, and look at the services, what can we expect in 2024? We're already far gone in the year. We're getting to the end of August. What can we expect by the end of this year, their performance, in the midst of all that they're having to face now?
No doubt, it has been a very challenging operating environment, given the macroeconomic headwinds, I would say, inflation, the liberalization of the Naira exchange rate, increasing production costs, So yes, but that notwithstanding, we believe that the policy reforms are in the right direction. And we also believe that the dislocation and the challenge that we're having in the industry right now is temporary. Ultimately, when we come through this phase, we will start to begin to see the gains from these policies. Already we see inflation coming down. We hope that trend holds, and we do think that it will. And then the exchange rate we expect will start to moderate as supply increases. And, a lot of efforts are in place to do that. And we see the diaspora, remittances. These are all sources of FX that will help to moderate the exchange rate. I believe the World Bank is forecasting that at some point it would stabilize at 1,200, 1,400. We're not sure.
It seems far from that.
Exactly.
We're struggling 1,006.
But it's a supply issue. Once we get that supply end right, I believe that things will stabilize. We may never get to 410 or 500. Those days are probably gone, but we'll get to a reasonable rate that businesses and people can live with.
Yeah, because when we saw the results, a lot of companies have released their result, their performance, especially for the first half, first and second quarter, and we see a whole lot of issues around the FX causing losses. So one can only hope that, with a bit of certainty, especially with the new reintroduction of the Dutch auction system that from the central bank, perhaps some people have been asking if they can go beyond the banks, to BDCs, to, companies, especially the big ones who are really in need. Perhaps that could bring that 1,002 that was forecast, because as of now, it seems difficult to head back to that 1,002 level.
Well, yes. I think the manufacturing sector, FMCG companies have been hard hit by, the floating of the exchange rate, especially when a lot of their inputs are imported. Okay, so yes, but the issue and the area of focus, and I believe government is, the CBN is working very assiduously, in this regard is to increase the supply of FX such that we get to a stable, I think what people are looking for is a stable exchange rate that they can plan with. The volatility now is a problem because it's changing by the day and impacting, across board.
So how do you see the banks getting through with this 70% proposed 70% windfall at the end of this year? I don't know. You should be hearing of some background conversation before it gets to us.
Exactly.
Because I know we've had a couple of conversations about that, and I think when they said 50%, the bank operators and stakeholders were like, okay, we can deal with this. But when it went up to 70%, it's a challenge, for them.
We're engaging on this, and the windfall tax, one can understand the temptation for it, but we should also be very careful and cautious. There are several voices that we've heard. Some bank CEOs have come out in support of the windfall tax. The professional services have been very cautionary. They've cautioned against it because it's, retroactive in nature, and we need to be careful about the precedent that we create. So there's yet to be a full landing on this windfall tax.
Can the banks survive it?
Issue is this something that, because the windfall that happened was because of the translation, okay? But it's not something that will be repeating, annually. So can they survive it? I believe the banks can survive it if it comes to be, but, probably with some challenge, because we're talking about something that's almost, in a sense, notional. And I say that carefully.
I noticed you say it carefully. So let's look at the insurance now. We've seen interest, renewed interest around insurance. We saw that last year. I think your report did say that it's because of the, increase in premium and all of that. But even this year, it's been kind of sustained. Long before now, you wouldn't even see insurance company in top trades, or gainers, but they seem to be there now. It's an active counter now. How do we explain that?
And it's something that we're very, very excited about, because as from the point of view of Enterprise NGR, we want the other sectors developing and doing as well as our banking sector. Insurance in most other jurisdictions are even bigger than banks. But it's here that, we're still, it's still growing. And we're very happy to see the growth and development in the insurance sector, for instance. And that is being driven by, one is the, you mentioned it earlier, the increase in insurance rates mandated by, government, and also the mandatory insurance policies. So that's good and is creating the short-term growth. But we also believe that the insurance industry should also invest in technology and also focus on micro insurance products to start to drive organic growth as well. There's a lot of opportunity for growth in microinsurance and digital products to access the underserved regions. So yes, we're very excited about what's happening in insurance.
Yeah, and also the green, the sustainable finance. Attention moving there, but I don't know if we can say it's fast enough or it's just a matter of necessity. Does it look intentional?
Sustainable finance is something that we, as a country, we need to key into very, very quickly. Globally, there's a lot of attention on sustainability, and there's a lot of funding, in that space. For us to key in, we need to, public and private sector need to work together to come up with more sustainable themed projects, to attract financing and access this global financing, and also ESG-themed products as well. It's a space that we need to be proactive about. Although right now it's something that we're very focused on our fossil fuel. That is the main source of our revenue, etc. But in our view at Enterprise NGI, and that's why we actually have a segment in our report on sustainable finance. We need to start positioning now, to access that funding. I know that we have the climate transition plan, etc. Most of it is on paper. We need to start focusing on implementation and making sure that we come up with these projects and key into the trends that are happening globally. Because of this net zero goal that most countries have keyed into, there's a lot of activity in that sector that we should be part of.
So, assuming we're having this conversation, we hope to have it earlier next year.
Absolutely.
God keeping us. What do you see? What do you think will be on the screen at this time? I capture your 2023 report as resilience. You saw a lot of. What do you see?
I see, again, that resilience continuing, because, again, this year has been very challenging for the sector. But given the pivotal role that this sector plays in driving economic development, we believe that is a sector that government should pay attention to, its development, etc. And what I see in the sector is a lot of innovation. And now we have the domestic dollar bonds that are happening. I know that Lagos State is working on positioning Lagos as an international financial center, again, which will give us a positive visibility as well as the right environment to attract foreign investment as well. So there are a lot of new things happening in the sector, and I think the sector will continue to show growth and positive performance in spite of the macroeconomic environment.
So we'll look forward
but that will moderate over time, we believe.
So we look forward to more exciting reports from this year, because I think we have more exciting happenings, the windfall tax, the recap.
Exactly.
And then we still have...
And even the recap, I think the recap is brilliant. And the impact will not only be on the banking sector, we're going to see a lot of activity in the capital markets where they're raising these funds, etc. So it's going to percolate. And we're very, very hopeful that the performance will be good.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Bekwe, for your time this morning. And we'll look forward to a renewed or new report.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
For 2024.
Thank you.
All right, talking about sustainable finance there, we heard Mrs. Bekwe talking about, some projects that are green. It seems that the Rural Electrification Agency heard that, and so they went to Edo State, and they are starting up renewable energy electricity for some people there. Let's listen to that.
Oloyon community, an agrarian community of about 3,500 residents in Ovia Southwest local government area of Edo State, is said to have been bereft of electricity for decades. The federal government, through the Rural Electrification Agency, has now remedied this with the provision of a 100 kilowatt solar hybrid mini-grid housed within the community. A representative of the state government joins the agency in the commissioning of the project.
We officially commissioned the 100 kilowatts peak Oloyon hybrid project.
After a brief tour of the facility, some of the stakeholders highlight the importance of the project.
What kind of battery?
This lithium-ion battery. Yeah.
President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's renewed agenda is to focus on Nigerians that have been long forgotten, and that's why we are here.
Before the energy, we don't have a wedding people here, but now we have the weather who are using the solar system. We have the furniture who are using it to do their work.
One other fresh beneficiary of the federal government's 100 kilowatt solar hybrid mini grid is Sule Camp in Ovia Northeast local government area of the state, another community that has been without power for about 30 years.
I commissioned this project to the glory of God.
If you take care of it, you don't vandalize it, they no steal them, you put security there. And you are able to recharge, and they pay small, they use that money to make sure that this solar power is there for you. Do you pledge that you will do that?
Yes. Hello, President. We thank our President. We thank Governor. We thank our Chairman. We thank everybody.
According to the Rural Electrification Agency, sustainability of the project is ensured through the Renewable Energy Users Cooperative Society, comprising members of the benefiting communities who are to be trained on technicalities, guarding the project, and also act as first responders responsible for passing on.
Well, congratulations to the people of Ovia North right there in Edo State. And just a little bit of market numbers yesterday. The market closed in the green. Well, thank God. 0.12%, still far away from the 97,000. Now at 54.4, the market gained 63 billion naira at the close of trade. Banking was in the green, and consumer goods down. Industrial unchanged after that dip fall the day before. Insurance had profit taking this time around. Oil and gas had a recovery. And Jais Bank, Sterling Bank, and International Breweries were the top trades. We'll give you fresh numbers at 1 p.m. You don't want to miss it. Do join myself and Will Ibong. We'll take you around the world of business in 55 minutes. And don't forget, we have that crypto conversation also during Business Incorporated. So let's head back to the Sunrise Daily Studio.
Well, a good number of times, we have spoken about, thank you, by the way, for staying with us. And that was a very good, one with Ine John McQuarrie, my colleague, who has had that conversation with you all the while. And all of her conversation has been centered around financial and professional services sector amidst the headwinds. I hope you were able to take a thing or two away from that conversation. But one that was on the front pages in the course of the week revolves around food security. And all of the investments, all of the efforts the country has been making to try to navigate Nigeria back to the path of agriculture, which was our mainstay in the First Republic, and to a good extent, sometime even during the military rule that followed the First Republic. Why do we seem to have deviated from it? And we've been making efforts, if memory serves me right, since the 70s, the second half of the 70s, into this Fourth Republic, serious efforts, struggles to get us back to the line of agriculture, all in the interest of food security. Let's have conversations around that this morning. We are with Dr. Debo Akonde, who is the DG, Oyo State Agribusiness Development Agency. He is also the Director in charge of PSP for Sub-Saharan Africa with IITA. Good morning, Dr. Akonde, and thanks for joining us this morning.
Morning, Ayo. Thanks for having me.
Great. Let's get straight into it. Oyo State is one. In fact, in the previous conversation we had with Ajuri Ngelale, we were talking about green economy in the country, and Oyo State happens to be one of those states that has tremendous power in the area of agriculture, sustainable agriculture, if I dare say. Is this something Oyo State is aware of from your own understanding?
We're aware of this, time will not permit me, but it is essential to mention that we did a good survey of the state, 5 years ago to understand what we have as our comparative and competitive advantage in agriculture and agribusiness, documented, and we have those documents in place. And the outcome of those survey, is what is guiding the policy, the strategy, and the program that Oyo State government is adopting now for the past 5 years, actually, not just now. And if you look at this data that is available, even from the federal government, it shows to you, or it will show to you, what that has led to in the last 5 years. In the last 5 years, the crop production in the state, in Oyo State, has grown astronomically, compared to the previous 5 years, on almost all crops, and I have those data that I could share with you as well. I mean, this is a combination of data from the federal government and the state government also. So yes, we were aware of this. We knew, we understood, what were the structural challenges that has been affecting agriculture, as you have rightly mentioned, for ages. All the accesses, that are required, the access to information, access to road, access to infrastructure, access to market, access to finance. And we tailor all our programs within the states to now respond to all these accesses. So if you see the project, the programs, policy programs, strategy of your state, they are tailored towards all this, as it were. So yes, we are aware of this, and it's guiding all what we've been doing to a very large extent.
Yeah. What would you say are the impediments to getting Nigeria to the path of food security? The president was one of the first things that the president spoke about. And I'm not sure I've heard any state government, even though they may be saying it, one way or the other. I've not really heard any state government come out and say, okay, these are our impediments, these are our challenges, and these are the lines we need to cross. The most we've had is that of food insecurity due to flooding, due to insecurity, and that's it. What are the impediments that Nigerians need to be aware of, particularly coming from an Oyo State, whom we happen to know was very, very strong in the area of agriculture in the First Republic, through which it built and developed Nigeria's first TV station?
So you're right. The problem that came upon us now, the food insecurity problem that came upon us, it's not something of today alone, even though there are macro or microeconomic policies, that has exacerbated it. These are things that were already in place that will have ordinarily been a problem, but this become bigger because of some of the decisions that were not rightly placed. And like I mentioned earlier, and this is not just in Nigeria, and in most countries in Africa, we need to look at what we call the structural problem of agriculture. For a very long time, we have been looking at the problem of agriculture from the peripherals. We look at the challenges today, and we want to quickly look at intervention, and then we find ourselves in similar problems tomorrow. There are like around 5 or 6 accesses that has been known in agricultural literature, and it's been there. I'm not the one that is coming up with all these issues. You talk about the access to market, you talk about access to infrastructure, you talk about access to finance, you talk about access to input, you talk about access to information and technology as well. And you consistently need to look at how you will develop programs and strategy, to overcome all this problem of accesses. Let me give you an example, and I will use Oyo State that you have mentioned as a good example. Oyo State, as probably you have known, is have large expanses of land, 28,000 square kilometers of land. That over 67% of that land is arable, meaning that you can cultivate over 67% of the land in Oyo State. By the time this government came in place, statistics of that we made shows that we've only cultivated less than 10% of that land. Now, those that has been the major actors, in agricultural sector in Oyo State, and Nigeria and Africa in general, has been the smallholder farmers. And that is not to say there's anything wrong with the smallholding, but the question you want to raise is that enough to cater for the need of today? For your state, if we had gone ahead to say that we want to do 20% of that arable land, that's 7% of the 28,000 square kilometers, we will have needed close to around 3.5 to 4 million smallholder farmers in Oyo State. That is almost 1/3, if not going to half of the population of Oyo State. It means that there's something wrong with regards to the the kind of the actors that we depend on solely for the food security of Nigeria. The same actors that you have been engaging when our population was 50 or 60 million. It's the same actors that we want to remain to be the actors in the food security area. So something is wrong in that. And that's not just in Oyo State. I just use this as an example. If we look at it across board, these actors that we're even making reference to are already getting old. They're in their 65, their 70s. It's becoming difficult for them to even imbibe new technology and innovation that will help us to accelerate production processes, as it were. Of course, they are doing their bit, they are trying their best. I'm not here to put them down, but I'm saying that we need to start creating a new system of food systems, across board, and bringing in new actors that will complement what these people are doing. Now I will go to what we have done in Oyo State, or what Oyo State government has done. In recognizing that fact that it will be difficult to work with just the smallholder farmers in Oyo State alone, it created a system to overcome most of these accesses that we have spoken about, as far back as 4 years ago. So now you will see that access to market in the state is at least to a very large extent, quite a lot has been done. Quite a lot has been done in terms of investment in rural infrastructure within the state. And I invite channels, to come around, and see these things. And maybe it's going to be helpful for other states to know what we're talking about. Access to market now is becoming something that is not a major problem. I requested some of my colleagues, that I work with, and even some media, to be stationed in key areas of the road infrastructures that have been built in Oyo State, in the rural area. By the way, 67% or a little bit more than that of the road that was built in Oyo State in the past 5 years were built in the rural area, targeting agribusiness and agricultural sector of the state. Now, if you station your camera in this road that I will mention, if you want to do an investigative journalism in that area, within the state, we have 6 regions, or 7, depending on where you belong. And all the access roads that are required within all this road has been built within the last 5 years. I'm talking about Iseye Oyo, Iseye Ogbomoso, Iseye Ijaye Ibadan. We're talking about Iseye Shaki, Iseye Yerua. Place a cameraman, in all those roads. And I'm saying with all my honor that if you don't see over 100 to 200, then is a capstar, they call it, vehicle that is moving agricultural product, precisely cassava and maize, every day, come back to me and say that I've told a lie. This is what I have seen. This is what I have checked, every day for the past month. That is what access, can do when the right infrastructure is put in place. Now, if that has not been done, what you will have been seeing is that most of this cassava will have been left on the field. Post-harvest loss will have become a major thing. That is one. The second thing is that the Oyo State government has started building what we call agricultural industrial hubs, across the whole of the state. One is completed in a particular location called Fashola Agribusiness Industrial Hubs. Within this hub alone, you have 10 industries within this hub, new industries that are focused on processing of agricultural products. That is what you refer to as access to market. For the whole of the region of Oyo, Iseye, and some aspect of Ogbomoso, they have where to sell their product. 2 of those companies, within that particular hub, are companies that are processing cassava to food materials, cassava flour or gari or whatever.
Konde, just one moment.
Are they getting there?
Just one moment. All of these that you're saying, I wouldn't blame you for trying to market your, whatever it is that you're doing. I'm actually looking at the challenges in the light of the nation, not just Oyo State. Because if these things that you're saying are actually as significant as you put them, then we'll not be having food security challenges. We'll not be having food security shortages. For instance, for the life of me, we've been talking about the special agro-industrial processing zones forever. Worth $520 million, Oyo State is one of those states who are pioneer beneficiaries, so to speak, in phase 1 of the project from the Africa Development Bank. So, and are all these things that you're saying, are they part of that initiative, or is this squarely, what exactly is happening with that one?
That is exactly where I'm going to. Now I've moved into talking about smallholding to us engaging using different actors and using different approach. I've mentioned to you the agribusiness industrial hub, which is a mirror of this strategic agro-processing zone that I'm making reference to. And what I wanted to come up with is that if Oyo State, through one of this industrial hub, which is similar thing to what we call the strategic agro-processing zone, can be doing what they are doing with one, then you can imagine what will happen to Nigeria as a whole. So that's where I was going to. If we have similar agro-processing industrial zone in most of the states in Nigeria that have subscribed, to be part of this particular project. SAPZ is the project that has been approved over 2 years now by the board of the African Development Bank, and you can quote me saying this. What has happened to it from the federal level? That is the question you'll be asking. We've been at the stage of pre-implementation ideas and going back and forth, in a nation where we have declared the food security as an emergency. I would have expected, that those that have that are leading the project or the program within the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security, we accelerate, implementation of this particular kind of a project, which is over $550 million dollars. I mean, dollars that has been approved. The irony of this is that the second phase of the project needs to be approved by the board of the African Development Bank by the end of this year. If we have not implemented this particular one, then how will they approve the second one? And this is one of the major projects that will have complemented what the smallholder farmers have been doing, bringing in large and medium or agricultural experts into a particular zone, to produce and to process. That was why I made reference to what Oyo State government has been doing, even outside of that African development. But it mirrored what SAPZ should look like. If 10 or 15 states are 5 or 6 of these particular kind of an SAPZ in their state, do you know what that will mean in contribution to the food productivity and production in Nigeria, and even the processing as well? For me, these are very crucial areas. We've done quite a lot of analysis with what is happening at the federating unit, at the federal level, at the state level. Great, wonderful, they are needed. But what about the programs and projects that speaks to the low-hanging fruit, that speaks to the immediate, and that will help us to accelerate decision making, and programs that will reduce the problem of food security within the country?
My apologies. I mean, everyone who is listening to Channels Television would know that not only have I been talking about this, particularly because of the opportunities of job creation, it's also to see whether or not, everyone who is in the value chain actually understands and buys into it. Now, when you say that the Federal Ministry of Federal Ministry of Agriculture is the one at the doorway, what exactly are you talking about? Are you saying that the Minister of Agriculture, are you saying that there's the Minister of Agriculture that is not moving the needle? Are you saying that the states themselves are not agreeing to the quota that to be distributed? Exactly at what bus stop are we now? Because from information available to us, that project is at the doorstep of disbursement of funds, and so many other infrastructure from the AFDB have been put in place. So what exactly is the bottleneck, Dr. Akande?
The bottleneck is that there is unnecessary bureaucracy at the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security that is not allowing the state to implement as it were. I mean, I'm saying these on a live program, and I'm making it as a clear point, when you have, I do understand, and I
just a second, Dr. Akande, so we can drill down. Just 1 second, so that we can drill down. Is it from the Federal Minister of Agriculture, this bottleneck, this bureaucracy you're talking about?
Oh no, I mean, I wouldn't be able to say precisely if it's the minister, but for me, I think the project has project coordinators. They have their project coordinating body. You have the national coordinating body under the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security. I'm not so sure what kind of a level of relationship they will have with the minister, so I wouldn't get into the details. But the point is that this particular body under the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security have a responsibility to accelerate. And what we have been saying is bureaucracy that is delaying and is slowing down the implementation, of this particular project. And I can tell you states, that have subscribed to phase 1, Oyo State included, and many other states in Nigeria as well. Cross River, FCT, the FCT, Kaduna, and probably Kano as well. And it's a similar problem that everybody is experiencing. Something needs to be done. My point is that You can do all this when you're saying that you are not having food security emergency. But if you declare emergency, for food security, there are components that are required in mitigating against those emergencies. It is not the time that you start using bureaucracy. It is not the time that you start just sitting around doing meetings and back and forth. It is the time that you need to put your hands on the field, and start the implementation. Come with a brief bureaucracy, accelerate, decision making, and ensure that things that needs to be done are done. States are waiting, states are ready, states have signed, to this agreement. Where is the implementation? The fund is not just going to be disbursed to the state. There's a coordinating body at the federal level because of the federal federating system that we have as a country. So where are we, with regards to that? I think a torchlight needs to be put to that particular project at the federal level. And not just that project. There are other projects as well that we need to look into. There's a $250 million of fund for food emergency that has been released by the African Development Bank, to the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security. Where are we on that? This was supposed to help us to accelerate the phase 2, on cassava production, on maize production, on rice production. Where are we on that as well? So, there are quite a lot,
It's actually quite interesting, Dr. Akande, because the information is out, from the national coordinator, the national project coordinator for the special agro-industrial processing zones, in the person of Dr. Kabir Yusuf, who is said to have actually been going around, the various parts of the country, talking to governors and all of that. So I'm just wondering why, if he is the one who is the project coordinator, are you saying that he's the one also impeding the execution of the project?
That's my point, Hayo. It is not enough to be going all around to talk to governors, okay? Talk to governors is very good. It's not about talking. It's about building the hub, okay? Let what is necessarily need to be done to start construction of these hubs. What people want is food production and food on the table, not paper documentations at the time of emergency. What documentation do we want to do that we have not done in 2 years? What meetings do we want to do that we have not done in 2 years since the board of the African Development Bank has approved the fund? What exactly is holding it? These are the questions that it needs to be asked as an individual, or the board, the NCO itself, the National Coordinating Office need to be asked. So to me, it's not just about meeting and, great, wonderful, good things, but you accelerate. Let's use COVID-19 as an example. If this is COVID-19, we will be going all around the place to be talking about, talking all around the place. We took the decisive action during COVID-19 to start acting rather than talking, So this is my point. Let us start acting. It's an emergency period that we are talking about. If we're talking about 10, 5, 7 years ago, maybe all these talkings and all this pre-implementation can prolong as much as it's going. But I'm not comfortable as an individual and as an expert that this has been delayed for this long and we are still where we are, despite the fact that we have the opportunity of the funding and still we start implementing. That is the point.
Okay, well, let's hope that Dr. Yusuf will be able to get across to us. At least we'll be able to get across to him to also invite him to speak, because $500 and something million is a lot of money in Nigeria's GDP at this time. But you said something the other time about needing more than 3 million smallholder farmers. That would be a little challenging, perhaps also in the line of the fact that, considering the fact that agriculture, education around agriculture also hasn't been particularly, the buy-in for agriculture, particularly among young people, hasn't been the best in recent time. And it speaks to whether or not the state governments themselves have a sustainability plan for agriculture. You're saying, you just told us a little while ago that many of the people who are in agriculture today, they are young and frail and all of that. It speaks to the fact that we have not been able to get the population interested enough in this particular conversation of agriculture. It means that when these older people, die off, our hunger is going to get worse. So in terms of educating people, young people in particular, for agriculture and getting their buy-in, what would be your own recommendation? You've been in this business for long enough to know what needs to be done now to get the young people to have a buy-in to agriculture for the long term.
Again, I will go back to the structural issues. You can't expect these young ones to go into areas where they feel insecure. You can't expect these young ones to go and start agricultural businesses in an area where the road network is terrible for them to move their product. You can't expect these young ones to engage in agriculture that is still depending on cutlasses and hoes. You can't expect these young ones to get into agriculture where access to finance for them after a year or two of intervention by the government is not available. You can't expect these young ones to get into agriculture where the government is not investing in innovations and technology. These are critical issues. I mean, we like using semantics and coming up with cliches, of what is happening globally, youth in agriculture. But what about all those factors that will impinge, their ability to engage? We need to look into all this and be serious about all this across board, federal and state level, and ensure we start putting our money where our mouth will be. I mean, put our money where our mouth is. For me, until we start doing this, we will still see young people that will not be showing interest in agriculture. Of course, I agree with you that we need to educate a lot. We need to make sure that they have an understanding of what it means to be in agriculture, because there are also diverse assumptions, that agriculture is cutlasses and hoe, agriculture is, whatever, but once we start engaging them and make them to understand that it is not just about, it's about technology, it's about innovation. I'll quickly give you one example if time permits. I was in the Netherlands at the invitation of the Minister of Agriculture of the Netherlands. And one of the young person that we saw, his farm, what he was doing was to develop an app. And that app, he combined with the drone, that the drone moves in his greenhouse every day to identify problems that has to do with tomato production in the greenhouse. And that drone send message to his computer at home, okay? And those messages he print out of his computer, and that is what he used in implementing in his farm the second day.
It's interesting. Yes.
Greenhouse.
Yeah, my apologies, Dr. Akande. It speaks to the fact that it's not just, these things can be done not just in the Netherlands, even in Nigeria as well, because we've seen one or two persons who we have also spoken to, who have also said, done some of these things and spoken actually using technology to defray insecurity was still on this particular program. Well, for now, we have to thank you very much and hope that we'll be able to get feedback from the National Project Coordinator of the SAPZ in the Federal Ministry of Agriculture to speak about the issues that you have raised. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Dr. Debo Akande is DG Oyo State Agribusiness Development Agency. He's also the Director, PSP, Sub-Saharan Africa of the IITA. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
So, well, Kayla and Nyota, you've heard it. I don't know what your take is on some of the issues that have been raised, or if we even have some feedback.
Indeed, Ayo, a lot of things when it comes to food security, that's a conversation across the country, and it's not just about Oyo State. It's a conversation everybody needs to get involved in. I'm talking to my children, for instance. I say, listen, you cannot, before you could decide, I don't want to eat rice that's available, so I'll go into the kitchen and go and cook. I
mean, I do have the added advantage of actually visiting the state's SAPZ, the agro processing zones in the states, and of course, a lot of work has to be done, especially from state governments. But that we are out of time. We can get into that conversation another time. We do have one message from Festus. Climate change, he says, is a threat to us all. And finding solutions will involve many people in and outside government. Those who want to attend COP29 should be allowed to attend if they can cover their own travel, visa, accommodation, and subsistence costs. There should be no government fund to cover these expenses for those not nominated by government, period.
Thank you so much for a beautiful time with you. We do wish you a fantastic day ahead. I'm Nyota Egbe.
Have a great day ahead. And Kayla Megwa.
And I'm Ayo Makinde. Bye for now.